There is a conversation that just happened between the person you love and their mother, the first time they have ever spoken your name to her directly, and I want you to know before anything else tonight that the moment did not go the way either of them expected. It did not begin as a planned announcement. It arrived naturally, in the middle of an ordinary conversation neither of them saw becoming significant. I know exactly what was said in that conversation, and I know exactly why it ended with tears no one saw coming that evening. Every specific word spoken carried more weight than either of them fully anticipated when the conversation actually began. You have wondered, more than once, whether the person meant for your future has ever actually spoken about you to the people closest to them, uncertain whether you exist only in private thoughts or whether you have quietly become part of conversations you were never present for. You have prayed for this specific kind of confirmation more times than you have told anyone, tired of feeling like your own story was only ever known to you. Have you ever wondered whether someone you love has finally, quietly told the people closest to them about you, imagining that exact conversation without any way of knowing whether it had actually happened yet? That specific imagining rarely stays confined to quiet moments, sometimes surfacing unexpectedly during ordinary tasks that have nothing directly to do with the relationship itself. You have likely caught yourself wondering about this in the middle of entirely unrelated activities, the question simply arriving unbidden. I did not come to you tonight to tell you that wondering was unfounded. I came to tell you something you do not know yet. The person you love just opened up to their mother about you for the first time, and shockingly, she cried, moved by something in that conversation neither of them had fully anticipated. You have not simply existed in someone's private thoughts this entire time. You have just become part of a conversation that changed the way an entire family is beginning to understand your place in their story. I want you to sit with that truth for a moment tonight, letting it settle fully rather than rushing past it the way you may have rushed past every other reassurance offered to you before, allowing this specific one to finally, fully sink in. Stay with me tonight, because what I am about to show you will change the way you understand every quiet hope you have ever carried about being spoken of by the people who matter most to the person you love, more deeply than you currently expect. Give this moment your full attention, because it carries more weight than an ordinary evening usually does, more than you may have initially assumed when this exact message first began tonight. There is a particular loneliness in loving someone while wondering whether you have ever actually been mentioned to the people closest to them, uncertain whether your own place in their life has been shared honestly with their family or kept quietly private for reasons you cannot fully know. This particular loneliness deepens whenever you witness someone else's relationship discussed openly within family circles while your own remains, as far as you know, entirely private. This comparison rarely tells the full story, since timing and readiness look different in every relationship, regardless of how open or private they currently appear from the outside. You have learned to avoid asking directly whether you have come up in conversations with their mother or their family, afraid the answer might reveal that you have simply not yet been mentioned at all. This avoidance rarely feels dramatic day to day. It simply feels like a reasonable caution, protecting yourself from an answer you were not ready to hear. Over time, this reasonable caution can quietly become the default, avoidance simply feeling safer than the vulnerability of actually asking directly. You have wondered whether being kept private means something is wrong, or whether it simply means the right moment for that conversation had not yet arrived. Do you know the exact day you first began wondering whether you had ever actually been spoken about to the people closest to the person you love? Whether that wondering arrived suddenly through a specific moment or gradually through accumulated silence, both carried exactly the same weight in shaping how you currently relate to this uncertainty. Whatever specific shape that early wondering took, it has quietly influenced how open or guarded you have remained about asking directly ever since. There is an exhaustion in loving someone while uncertain whether their family even knows you exist in any real sense, showing up fully to the relationship while quietly wondering whether you have been given the same reality in their family conversations that you have given them in your own. This exhaustion shows up most clearly in quiet, unguarded moments, wondering privately what exactly gets said about you when you are not in the room. That specific wondering rarely resolves on its own, often lingering long after the actual moment of doubt has passed. Some of you carry a private fear that you may never actually be introduced or spoken about honestly, that whatever is real between you will remain permanently private, known only between the two of you and never shared with the people who matter to them most. I want to release that specific fear from you tonight. Privacy in this season has never once meant permanence. Whatever length of privacy this relationship has held so far, it was never a verdict on how the story will ultimately unfold. You have prayed about this specific uncertainty more times than you have told anyone, asking me plainly whether you would ever actually become part of the conversations happening in their family, rather than remaining a private, unspoken part of their life. Every single one of those prayers reached me exactly as fully as any confident, expectant prayer ever could, regardless of which specific emotion accompanied it at the time it was spoken. I see the version of you that trusts the relationship fully despite this uncertainty, and the version that wonders, on your hardest nights, whether you exist as anything more than a private thought never shared with anyone else, and I want you to know both versions are equally known to me, equally loved by me, neither one required to have this fully resolved before you come to me honestly about it. There is no version of this uncertainty that requires managing or hiding in front of me, the trusting version and the wondering version equally welcome, equally seen. You are not imagined or hidden away. You are not permanently private. You are simply someone who has not yet been shown that the conversation you have longed for has already happened, more powerfully than you could have anticipated. Let that specific truth settle fully into you tonight, releasing whatever assumption you have carried that you remained entirely unspoken about in the life of the person you love. When you are uncertain whether you have been shared honestly with someone's family, it becomes tempting to assume the worst, either concluding you are being deliberately hidden or quietly pressuring the relationship forward before it is genuinely ready for that conversation. There is a man in Scripture who chose concealment out of fear rather than honesty about a relationship that actually mattered deeply to him. When a famine forced Abraham to travel to Egypt, he told Sarah to say she was his sister rather than his wife, afraid that Pharaoh's officials would kill him if they knew the truth about their marriage. This concealment nearly cost him everything, as Pharaoh took Sarah into his own household, and only direct intervention prevented a devastating outcome from unfolding. Abraham's fear led him to hide a truth that actually deserved honest protection rather than concealment, and the consequences of that choice, though ultimately resolved, created real danger that honesty from the beginning would have avoided entirely. Consider how much simpler the entire situation would have unfolded had Abraham trusted honesty from the very beginning rather than choosing fear-driven concealment. This is worth remembering the next time honesty feels riskier than the concealment it would replace. Have you ever felt tempted to hide or minimize a relationship that actually mattered deeply to you, afraid of what honesty might cost, only to realize later that the concealment itself created more difficulty than the truth ever would have? Some of you have quietly wondered whether the person you love might be doing a version of what Abraham did, concealing your significance out of some fear you cannot fully name, rather than trusting that honesty about your relationship would actually be received well by the people who matter to them. You may recognize this exact wondering in your own recent thoughts, uncertain whether the silence around this relationship reflects fear rather than simple timing. Both explanations are genuinely possible, and only continued patience will eventually reveal which one has actually been true. None of this makes either of you foolish beyond repair. It makes you human, understandably cautious the same way Abraham was cautious, afraid that full honesty about something significant might somehow invite unwanted difficulty rather than trusting it would actually be received with support. Recognize this specific caution the next time it arises, meeting it with gentle understanding rather than harsh judgment of either yourself or the person you love. This gentleness matters, since fear responds far better to patience than to pressure. I did not abandon Abraham despite his fear-based concealment, and the truth about Sarah eventually came out safely, without the harm his fear had anticipated. I am not asking you to force premature honesty in this relationship before it is genuinely ready. I am asking you to trust that when the right moment for openness finally arrives, it will be received with far more warmth than fear has ever allowed either of you to expect. I want you to hear something important underneath this warning. Whatever fear has quietly delayed this specific conversation, I am not asking you to rush it before its time. I am simply inviting you to trust that honesty, when it finally happens, tends to be received far more warmly than fear predicts it will be. There is a story in Scripture about a mother figure whose entire emotional posture shifted the moment she finally heard the full account of what had happened between her daughter-in-law and a man who mattered, and it is the clearest picture I can give you tonight of the conversation that just took place. After Ruth's first encounter with Boaz in the fields, she returned home to Naomi, who had been living in real grief and bitterness since the deaths of her husband and both sons. Ruth told her everything: the kindness Boaz had shown, the grain he had ensured she received, every detail of that unexpected day. She left nothing out, describing even the small, seemingly minor details that later proved significant to Naomi's understanding of what had actually happened. Scripture tells us Naomi's response was immediate and emotional, recognizing Boaz's name at once and declaring, "Blessed be he," understanding instantly the full significance of what her daughter-in-law was describing. That instant recognition revealed just how closely Naomi had been tracking every possible avenue of hope, even during her deepest grief. Grief and hope had apparently been coexisting quietly in her heart the entire time, even during the years she seemed consumed only by loss. Details Ruth may have considered unimportant turned out to carry the exact significance Naomi needed to recognize what was actually unfolding. Naomi's emotional response was not calculated or reserved. It came from someone who had been carrying real grief for years, suddenly confronted with the possibility of genuine restoration through a relationship she had no way of anticipating when that ordinary morning began. Have you ever shared news with someone you love and watched their emotional response reveal far more depth of feeling than you had anticipated, their reaction shaped by things you did not fully understand until that exact moment? That specific experience carries a distinct kind of humility, realizing only afterward how much history and hope had actually been shaping a reaction you initially misread. This humility is worth remembering the next time an emotional response initially catches you off guard. This is what I want you to receive about your own story tonight. The mother who just heard about you for the first time carries her own private hopes and her own private history, the same way Naomi carried years of grief before Ruth's account of Boaz reached her. Her tears were never simply about you as a stranger. They came from a much deeper place: recognition, relief, and hope she had likely been quietly carrying long before this conversation ever happened. Whatever specific hopes she had privately carried, your description likely touched something she had been quietly holding for longer than either of you realized. Naomi's emotional response to Ruth's account directly led to her guidance that ultimately secured Ruth's future with Boaz completely. Her tears were never the end of the story. They were the beginning of her own active involvement in what followed. The emotional response you are hearing about tonight may be leading toward this same kind of active, warm involvement, a mother whose own heart has just been moved enough to become genuinely invested in what is unfolding between you and the person she loves. Let me show you what this looks like in a life closer to yours than an ancient conversation in Bethlehem ever could. There was a man named Desmond who had waited nearly a year before finally telling his mother about a woman named Amara he had been seeing, uncertain how she would respond given how private he had always kept his relationships in the past. He had genuinely convinced himself that waiting longer was simply wisdom, though part of him privately wondered whether it was actually rooted in the same kind of fear Abraham once carried. That quiet self-questioning followed him for months before he finally decided the conversation was worth having, regardless of the outcome. He described the conversation carefully, mentioning Amara's specific qualities, how she made him feel more like himself than anyone he had dated before, and how seriously he was beginning to consider a future with her. He had rehearsed how to say all of this several times beforehand, uncertain exactly how much detail felt appropriate to share with his own mother. His mother listened quietly through the entire explanation, and when he finished, she was crying, explaining through her tears that she had been praying specifically for someone exactly like the woman he had just described for years. She had never once told him about this specific, years-long prayer, keeping it privately between herself and God until this exact moment made sharing it feel finally appropriate. Desmond had no way of knowing, walking into that conversation, that his mother had been carrying a specific, detailed hope for his future for years, one his description of Amara had unexpectedly and completely matched. He replayed the conversation afterward many times, still somewhat amazed at how precisely his own honest description had matched a hope he never knew existed. Each time he replayed it, he found himself more grateful he had finally chosen honesty over continued waiting. His mother's tears were never about surprise or concern. They came from years of quiet hope finally meeting the description of someone real. That single conversation changed the entire tone of his mother's involvement afterward, moving from quiet distance to active, warm support, asking regularly about Amara and eventually becoming one of her closest advocates within the family. Amara later admitted she had been genuinely nervous meeting his mother for the first time, having no idea just how warmly and completely she had already been received before they ever actually met in person. That first meeting, which she had spent weeks anxiously anticipating, ended up feeling far more natural than she ever could have expected. I am not telling you this story to promise you a specific year of waiting or a specific detailed hope. I am telling you this so you understand that the tears the mother of the person you love just shed may be carrying the same depth, years of quiet hope finally meeting a description of someone real, someone who happens to be you. Do you remember the specific wondering you thought of at the beginning of this, whether you had ever actually been spoken about to the people closest to the person you love? I want you to hear this now with the full weight it deserves. Do not let it pass by simply as another comforting sentence among many. Let it actually land. Whatever fatigue you have carried into this exact moment tonight, let this specific truth cut through it fully, reaching exactly where that fatigue currently sits. The person you love just opened up to their mother about you for the first time, and shockingly, she cried, the same way Naomi's emotional response to Ruth's account revealed years of grief meeting genuine hope, the same way Desmond's mother's tears revealed years of quiet, specific prayer finally meeting someone real. Read that again if you need to. Let it settle fully before continuing on. Do not rush past this the way exhaustion may have tempted you to rush past other comforting words before, especially not this one. You have spent so long believing you might remain permanently private, uncertain whether the people closest to the person you love would ever actually know you exist in any real sense. That was never true. Release that specific assumption tonight fully, trusting instead the pattern already confirmed through Naomi and through Desmond's mother, that genuine warmth so often arrives exactly when it seems least expected. Let this same pattern hold true in your own story, warmth arriving right on time even when the timing feels uncertain from where you currently stand. Naomi's emotional response led directly to active involvement in Ruth's future. Desmond's mother became one of the closest advocates within the entire family. The tears you are hearing about tonight are very likely following this same pattern. This is the sentence I want you to carry with you when you leave this moment tonight. You have just become part of a story far larger than the two of you alone, and the tears that were shed tonight were tears of recognition, not tears of concern. Carry that specific truth with you into every ordinary day that follows, until the full warmth of this welcome becomes completely visible in whatever way it is meant to. Let me pray this over you now, the way I have already been praying it over you long before tonight. This prayer is not new. It has simply been waiting for the right moment to be fully spoken over you. Receive it now exactly as it is offered, without needing to have earned it through any specific measure of faith or certainty, simply open to receive it as it genuinely is. Heavenly Father, I bring before you the one reading these words right now, wondering whether they have ever truly been known to the family of the person they love, longing to be more than a private, unspoken part of someone's life. Give them the same joyful understanding Naomi eventually reached, recognizing that emotional response from someone close to their loved one as genuine warmth rather than something to fear. Teach them that tears in this exact context nearly always signal depth rather than danger, recognition rather than rejection. Give them confidence that this specific conversation, however it continues to unfold, carries real warmth rather than hidden concern, the same warmth that carried Desmond's mother from quiet distance into active, loving support. Heal whatever fear has convinced them they might remain permanently private or unknown to the people who matter most in this relationship. Free them from measuring the health of this relationship by how private it has remained so far, trusting instead that timing, not permanence, has shaped that privacy. Remind them that Abraham's fear-based concealment was never actually necessary, and that honesty, when it finally arrives, tends to be received far more warmly than fear predicts. Protect their mind from assuming the worst about an emotional response they do not yet fully understand. Give them the discernment to notice, gently, how differently tears of concern and tears of recognition actually feel once the full story becomes clear. Teach them instead that tears like these so often carry years of quiet hope rather than hidden worry. Restore their confidence in their own place within this relationship, understanding that being spoken about honestly to the people who matter most is a genuine step toward a shared, connected future rather than something to be anxious about. Let them receive this news as the genuine gift it actually is, rather than immediately searching for a hidden concern underneath it. Provide for whatever practical weight makes this particular season heavier than it needs to be, whether that is uncertainty about how the relationship continues from here, or the quiet exhaustion of hoping to finally be fully known by the family of the person they love. Meet them in the specific, ordinary stress this uncertainty adds to otherwise unrelated parts of their day, quiet distraction, low-grade anticipation, a heaviness that follows them even into tasks that have nothing directly to do with this particular relationship. Give them breakthrough in the exact place this uncertainty has weighed the heaviest, and let them trust that the same warm recognition that moved Naomi, and moved Desmond's mother, is currently, genuinely present in this exact moment too. Give them peace tonight regardless of exactly how this new chapter continues to unfold, a peace built on trusting that being genuinely known and warmly received is worth far more than the uncertainty that came before it. Let this peace remain steady through however many more conversations and moments still lie ahead in this unfolding relationship. Strengthen them spiritually in whatever remains of this season, so that as this family continues to warmly receive them, they walk into that welcome with gratitude rather than lingering disbelief that it could genuinely be happening. Give them the same open heart Ruth eventually carried into Boaz's family, receiving genuine welcome without needing to constantly question whether it was actually real. If these words found the exact place in you that needed them tonight, let it be known, even if only to me, even if you never say it out loud to a single other person. Someone else you love has likely wondered this same thing about their own relationship, quietly uncertain whether they had ever truly been known to the family of the person they love, and they may need to hear tonight that this same warm recognition may already be unfolding for them too. Let them, too, release the specific isolation this uncertainty has quietly created, trusting that warm recognition is available to them just as fully as it currently is to you. You have not simply existed in someone's private thoughts this entire time. You have just become part of a conversation that changed the way an entire family is beginning to understand your place in their story. Rest in this tonight. The tears that were shed were tears of recognition, and you have just become part of something far larger than you previously ever imagined possible. Let that closeness carry you gently into tomorrow morning, and into every ordinary day that follows after it. Nothing about this welcome requires you to prove anything further before receiving it fully.